How's everyone doing? For those who don't know me, my name is Julie, and this is my fourth Bitblockboom. This conference is really special to me because this is where I met my community who helped me um, learn about Bitcoin and go through that Bitcoin journey. Bitcoin has given me so much, and one of the most important things is it's given me a way to opt out, find a way to opt out, and it's um, teaching me how to teach that to my daughter as well. So thank you guys, and thank you to all the sponsors. This is my first BitBlock Boom as part of the team, helping with sponsorships and relations. So if you want to be a sponsor, please come say hi. I want to introduce our next speaker. He's a guy who's read more about Bitcoin than anyone you know. And if you're like me, you'll probably hear his voice in your head when you're reading a Bitcoin book because he's narrated so many Bitcoin books. He's the nicest person. He is dedicated to helping people learn about Bitcoin. And now he's doing a lot of work with how Bitcoin and AI are tied. And it's actually given me a lot of hope. Whereas before I was very scared of what AI is going to bring, he's actually kind of shown that it's actually could bring a better future. So without further ado, Guy Swan.
Thank you. What's up, guys? Yeah. It's funny, I always get nervous, but as soon as I get back up here, I'm like, okay, this is easier. All right. So my talk is, I am Guy Swan, the guy who's read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. Host of Bitcoin Audible, AI Unchained, Shitcoin Insider, which is not dead, by the way. Stay tuned. And also a unnamed coming project, so keep an eye out for that. Well, my talk today is Rotten Money, Rotten Society. And one thing that I think is really discounted is the degree to which money is the fabric of society. Like, people think of it as a transactional tool, and it's just like kind of this thing that allows us to punch some numbers and do some stuff and trade. But what it actually does is it enables specialization of labor. It enables us to solve an incredibly difficult problem, which is understanding your relationship to the things that you value and compare it to my relationship to the things that I value. That's an unbelievably hard problem. If I have an apple or an orange right now and I'm trying to decide what to eat, it's very easy because I'm the single point of reference, right? Like, I know my relationship with an orange, I know my relationship with an apple. And so my choice is very simple. Okay, well, what do I feel like right now? And, just for the record, I really like apples, but there's something about like peeling an orange and like cleaning it off and then eating, getting that reward is just like this like nice little, it's a very therapeutic experience. But I probably prefer apples just for taste, just for the record. But we have absolutely, so because we have a central point of comparison, I know how to compare apples to oranges, but I do not know how to compare how much you like oranges to how much I like apples. Maybe he's really great at making an argument. Maybe mine's really nuanced and I don't have a lot of activity, or like I'm not really, active and enthusiastic about my explanation. And everybody believes that he likes oranges more. But maybe I'm willing to pay $10 for an apple and he's only willing to pay $2. Maybe he just likes to explain things. We have no independent metric. Money is that independent tool. And in doing so, it is specifically the most important piece of the puzzle to allow society to scale past Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number is that 150 to 200 people, where a group still feels like a group. And once you start, it's why we were all basically tribal before we had a collective and robust monetary system, we would only live as families, as tribes, and they would only grow to so big before internal conflict made it so that like this half of the room just doesn't know what the hell is going on over on this side of the room, and so they create some stupid narrative. They imagine that this person is this thing and they believe this stuff, and then you fall into your tribes and you start being divisive and you have conflict in the group. Money is actually the most critical tool to sort that problem out so that we are cooperating instead of fighting. Because I'd go to a store and I like I might have nothing in common with the person I'm doing business with. Like none whatsoever. Like they might believe a different religion, speak a different language, but if I'm able to trade with them, suddenly what they contributed to society and what I contributed to society, I can get his contribution and he can get my contribution. I don't have to trust him, I don't have to know him because we are independently trusting the money. And therefore somebody I might have 1,000 reasons to hate. They like the Patriots, and I freaking hate that team. Like there's 1,000 other social or cultural or arbitrary reasons why we might hate each other, but we're working together despite it because we have this economic tool we can use to solidify our contributions to society. So my argument, this rather lengthy introduction. Who knows whether I'm going to get through these slides? I'm going to try. I swear to God, I deleted more slides than are left. This is a very, very long discussion. It can easily be 8 hours, so I'm going to try to get through this. But my argument is that sound money creates a sound society. Rotten money creates a rotten one. And money is half of every single transaction, every single thing we do. If an incentive of money pushes us just a little bit in one direction, it does it for everybody at every stage, multiple times a day, every year, every generation. And it frames the environment and the path that society evolves toward. So, what do I mean by this? So, what is money? Money is not wealth. Money is not real capital. We don't do anything with it. Like, I stole this from my brother, $20. This is a piece of cotton. I do not eat this. I do not put it in a machine to make shirts. It's not used up in any part of the process. In fact, if I gave it to Johnny and then he gave it to Yitta and then she traded it with somebody else and they traded it, like this could go around the room 100 times and end up back at me and I could have the exact same one. Its whole purpose is to not do anything. It's to not change. Why? Because everything else we do does change. If I bought a sandwich and stuck it in my pocket, 2 hours later, I promise you, you don't want that sandwich. But I do want it right now. But you'll still take the $20. $20 stays. It's the same. No, depending on your time frame. So it's not a resource. So what does it do? Introducing Dan the sandwich maker. Dan makes sandwiches. And he works really, really hard. He's a good sandwich maker. He makes them delicious. Look at that. Mid-journey. Look at those freaking sandwiches. They're delicious. He makes and he sells 100,000 sandwiches. And every time he makes a sandwich, he earns $1. He feeds somebody, does a favor for them. He gets $1. But he doesn't consume. He doesn't take anything. He just saves $1. He does this 100,000 times. And he doesn't have a meal. He doesn't buy gas. He doesn't do anything. He just diligently makes sandwiches for other people. So what can his $100,000 in savings tell us about money? It's a record. It's a provable record that he helped 100,000 people and we all owe him back. He fed and created 100,000 meals for other people. And that money basically behaves as society's promise to say, we'll give you back all that you put in. So I've got a little animation here. He puts in and gets, let's see if this actually, okay, gets $100,000 and then uses that exact $100,000 to take out only so he grew the economic pool of resources and then can use that $100,000 to take the requisite amount of value back out. And what he does when we're all working, what he does is make sure that everybody's fed while we work to make the economy better. He's adding value for us so that we can keep getting stuff done. So again, so we can work together and specialize and improve things. Money is a record keeping system. It's proof that you put in and enables you to take it back out. So if money is a record keeping system, what is printing money? Fraud. It just means that somebody gets to take shit out without doing anything. That's all it fucking means. And you can call it 1,000 different things. You can call it quantitative easing, and you can call it a bank term finance program, and you can call it debt and stimulus and all that shit. But it doesn't matter if you're manipulating the record keeping system. All you are doing is enabling whoever you give the points to eat all the sandwiches and do nothing for anybody else. So imagine, contrary to the notion that savings is bad for the economy, which is mind-numbingly insane that the Keynesians literally try to convince us of this, is that savings is actually the only proof we have with skin in the game choices from every single person you traded with that you're actually a net producer, that you actually net contributed to the whole economic system instead of just destroying stuff. And that's a really important job. It quite matters whether or not we are net destroying stuff or net creating stuff. And so if we think about an economy with 10 people, and we got our economic pool of resources, the actual stuff, the shirts, the food, the houses, the cars. Let's say we have a hypothetical economy of 10 people and everybody's doing their job. Uh, you know, Dan's making the sandwiches. Tommy makes the cars. One guy gets the water. One guy builds the houses. One guy gets the roads, the gas, blah, blah, blah. Everybody does their job except for Ben. Ben is an asshole. Ben is just, nobody likes Ben. Shut up. Ben's entire job is to defraud the money system. So he gets a house, he gets a car, he gets a road, gets the water and the sandwiches. He gets one of everything that everybody else gets. Because why? We all want that shit. And he doesn't actually provide anything in return. He doesn't contribute. And even worse is he distorts the pricing mechanism for everybody else to figure out what it is they should be doing. Because maybe only one guy needed a car, and instead Ben bought the car. Well, now that guy's going to spend more resources building another car when we only needed one to begin with. Ben just took it from us. Ben sucks. God bless. I don't know why anybody likes Ben. All right. Another important thing, falling prices are natural. The whole point of the economy is to make stuff better. Like, there's this huge conflation with deflation and inflation, monetary price inflation. Like, there's like 100 different terms and specificity. Like, you can have prices go up, inflation as it's usually referred to, and not have monetary inflation. You can have people print a lot of money and you can have prices not go up. And a lot of people think that that's totally fine. That means that we're not being stolen from. That means there's no negative consequences because look, chicken's still the same price. To the contrary, it causes a massive systemic malinvestment. All it means if the price doesn't go up is that our collective ability, the 9 of us that are actually doing something, our collective ability to add more resources outpaced the degree to which the other guy was just destroying things. That's all it means. It doesn't change the fact that the printing of the money, the counterfeiting of the money, is still just a giant suck of all of our resources into his coffers and his economic corner where all of his buddies and the counterfeit class like to hang out, not actually contribute anything and be ungodly wealthy. So we're just refer to price inflation as prices going up and monetary inflation as inflation. So regardless of what prices do, inflation has these consequences. I want to ask, who likes to work and not make progress? That guy does. Weirdo. Um, who likes busy work? Why? No, just the crazy person. So why is it that we work? We work all the time just to make workflows better, to come up with some way to make just a little bit of energy go a little bit further. So what we spend all day, we start our days with problems and we try to end with the solution. Like, there's nothing that'll piss me off more than starting my day trying to do something and then have ended the day, like, and have lost 10% of my progress, realizing that I just, like, fundamentally started in the wrong place and I have to redo all my work. That just pissed me off to no end. I don't even care if I got paid for it. I just hate it. I want to make progress. The whole reason any of us go to work is to make stuff better. How in the hell is stuff not getting more affordable? That's the whole point. Why would we do it otherwise? Imagine you had $10,000 and that's your salary, and you can buy what $10,000 buys is like a set of stuff. And, um, that's your standard of living, right? Let's say after a year of working, we have sound money and the prices of everything fall by 5%. Why does that happen? A Keynesian will tell you this is destructive to the economy. People won't invest, blah, blah, blah. The reason that it happens is specifically because things got better. It's because we improved our processes. It's because we made machines better. We repaired broken machines. We improved everything such that the supply and output of what we could produce grew. And thus the cost of those things fell. Why? Because they got easier to make. That makes perfect sense. If things are easier to make, they should be more affordable. Now, the government and Federal Reserve targets 2% inflation, which means they want prices to increase. So at the end of that year, if we have 5% lowering of prices, then what that means is that with that same $10,000, the average prices of everything has fallen, which means at the end of the year, we will have our exact same standard of living and buy all the things that we bought at the beginning of the year, and we'll have $500 left over. We will be wealthier because we get our part of the contribution of everybody making the world better. Now, when we target 2% inflation, talking about price, that means that all that 5% is stolen, and at the end of the year, to buy all the same shit we bought just to live the way we were living before costs $10,200. We have to not buy something we were already buying. We worked our asses off for a year and got poorer. And that's the target. We hit 10%, 18% easy, especially you're living in a city. Oh, doesn't even break a sweat. Go to something like Shadow Stats. It's very common for 8 to 12% per year. And what's funny is this is basic economics. The price falling is the thermometer. It's not like something that causes some detrimental effect in society. To the contrary, it's actually the thing that lets us know we have more supply and more productivity. Why? Supply and demand curve. That's how the price works. If you make more stuff, the price goes down. If you have more output for the same input, stuff is cheaper. That's the first thing in the first class of economics that everybody should learn. And somehow Keynesians have convinced us of the opposite. So what happens when you treat counterfeiting as a productive and important role in the system of society? It's important to note every single one of the Keynesian arguments is the broken window fallacy applied to something else. It's all the exact same. We're going to devalue savings and encourage investment. Broken window fallacy. Broken window fallacy, for those who don't know, is if we break a window, well, then somebody then has to pull out of savings and go buy a new window from the window maker, and that creates new activity for the window maker, and then they have more money, and then they're going to go buy and do something else, and there's like this multiplier effect, and after some amount of time, it's some net productivity gain. Well, the question is always, where does the actual capital come from? Because the money is just the record keeping system. So the net of what we actually did, arbitrary of anything that happens down the line, is we broke a window. If the broken window fallacy had any amount of truth to it at all, we could literally, it's the same excuse they say that war is good for the economy. This it's mind-numbingly idiotic. We could all just, like, why would we have to go actually kill people? Why would we actually have to go blow up a country? That's horrible. Why don't we just do it and not put anybody on it? Why don't we just make like 1,000 battleships and just go put them out in port, put them out in the middle of the ocean, and just blow them up, and just do it for like forever, and then we'll just be infinitely wealthy. The economy will be so busy, and everybody be working their asses off, and just blow stuff up. It probably would look really cool. The question is always, where did the actual resources come from? Because the poor bastard who had to fix his window was gonna buy it, was gonna buy his kids braces, was gonna take a fucking break, take a Saturday off and not work so that he could build his family, be with his friends, go watch a movie. But now he has to replace a window, a perfectly good window that was working. Why? Why do we break it? Same thing with devaluing savings. That if we bleed everybody of value, well, they'll have to go invest it. If you decrease the cost of debt artificially, everything will be more affordable. Debt is not owning something. We'll get to that in a second. And also, debt created out of thin air, backed by your promise to pay it back, literally how the fractional reserve system works, is not doing you a favor. Like, imagine I don't have any capital and I loan you $300,000 to buy a house, and you get to live in the house, but you're now paying me interest. And if you don't pay it, I get your house. I didn't have anything. I just issued the money out of thin air. You're paying me a salary. Why are you paying me a salary? I didn't make a house. I didn't borrow a house from somebody else. I invented money out of thin air, and now you have to pay me for it every month. And you don't own it. You're renting it from me. You're renting a house from me that I never owned. What's funny is there's actually a guy, I can't remember what article I read on the show, but there's actually a guy who proved this in court and got out of having to pay his debt to a bank. And the guy was a lawyer. Really fascinating little story. I unfortunately don't have the time to get into it, but you should check out Bitcoin Audible and look in the stream of 1,000 episodes or whatever. And arbitrarily, it's somewhere in there. Sustainability. This is you hear this political platitude all the time. Is it sustainable? Well, when money's most important job is to make sure that we only consume what we put in, and then we start defrauding it with the explicit purpose of consuming more, all we have done is kill the balance of that system, and we just overconsume. We just consume a whole lot of shit at a price that doesn't actually make sense, and until we are literally gutting our economy of real resources, of real productivity, of real capital. And the quality of all of those things start to degrade. The more you take out, the higher the price goes. It's the point of the monetary system. And this is the most important regulator to make sure that we stop consuming when we are running out of stuff. And when you manipulate the money to make things affordable, to encourage consumption, to devalue savings, all you do is cut that regulator off. And we keep consuming, we keep destroying resources that we aren't actually putting back in. Encourages investment. That's a fun one. One really important thing to understand is savings is the investment in our future. Like, Savings isn't something that isn't invested. It's invested in the people. It's invested in the families. It's our protection against the future. It's our record of getting back out the contributions that we put in. And Ben is just just messing with us. Um, so when we devalue savings, let's see. So a good way to think about this, let's just use the water analogy. So money, because it's not supposed to change, supposed to stay the same, it if it is sound, if it's not being created out of thin air, it acts as this kind of perfect totem for measuring whether or not we are creating value or destroying it, right? Which means that if we are making nominally making money, it should be the closest thing to proof that we are adding value. If we are nominally losing money, it's the closest thing to proof that we are destroying stuff. Now, what happens in that context, in the analogy, that makes uh, that makes money like the perfect glass of water. It's like clear water. Therefore, the only thing that is investable, because it's the totem that we compare everything against, the only thing that's worth investing in is essentially better water. It's essentially like we want to make tea, we want to make coffee, we want to do something to improve it. We certainly don't want to destroy it. If we end up with murkier water, that's a bad thing. To devalue the money to encourage investment, it's funny, is it kind of does what they say it does, but it does so by murkying the water. You make a crappy glass of water, and so suddenly, when we should have only been investing in things that make the water better, now the standard is crappy. So there's this whole space of investing where we can just make like not shitty water. We can just like kind of clean out the sediment and make like sort of murky water. And so, but we don't actually have any more capital. Remember, this is access to capital. It's a proxy. It's not real. Which means that what we actually have is we have gutted the investment for the actual good, positive value of society. And we have now taken a ton of it to go for low hanging fruit, which is just filtering crappy water. So you make a 3%, 5% gain, you're not actually doing anything. It's not actually a net productivity gain. There's no value being created there because the money's losing more. But now the one thing that we have to measure to make sure that we aren't destroying stuff is lying to us. And what does this do to finance? Holy crap. This is a brilliant way to bloat the financial system beyond belief. Because now all of the capital that we had saved for our future and for our families is now put into the hands of financiers, of index funds and money managers who all make fees off of us. They love this game. Holy crap, they love this game. And in doing so, massive corporations have access to our capital that otherwise wouldn't. And the entire reason is just because we're trying to make a measly 7 or 10% in the stock market when all we have to do is actually have sound money. And savings would naturally do that. Why? Because we're making that happen. We're putting that input, that productive input or output into the economy. So, an interesting thing to think about is that industries should fall over time as a portion of the economy. Like, for instance, the example is that farming was once 90% of the economy. But if farming is 90% of the economy, you can't run an internet industry. Every time there's a new innovation or new tech or something, it creates its own portion of the economy, and everything else, like on purpose, will have to decline as a share of the total economy. Specifically because like farming is only like 5% of the economy now, and it's because we're really good at making food. So we don't need to waste 90% of our resources on making food anymore. We can do it with just 5% of the economy. Finance is just organizing the stuff. It's just allocating the things, it's not even the real thing. It's just organizing and trading the actual things, the actual houses, the actual equity, the actual stock, and the production of the goods. How? Look at that. This is the portion of the financial system that is our economy. It's getting bigger and bigger every single year. We're getting worse at allocating the stuff that we make. It's costing us more to do it. And specifically because of this poisonous incentive to blindly dump all of our money into corporate America, which is bloating all of those financial assets and making them look like an even better financial opportunity. It's why banks just go ahead and lend at 0 or 1% rates to a bunch of giant corporations. And what are they going to do with it? They don't have any. It's not like if you throw 10 times as much money at them, they're going to have 10 times the number of good ideas. They're going to have the same good ideas they had before. They're just going to use 90% of the money to buy up all their small competitors. Money that we're paying for, that came out of nowhere, that nobody actually lent them. It was created out of thin air. And so they're just going to swallow up small business across this country and bloat the entire ecosystem of corporate America purely because we don't have anywhere to put our savings that doesn't bleed out day after day. So we have to give it to them. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course, the stock market goes up. Doesn't matter what happens. Stock market just goes up. That's why P&E ratios don't make any sense anymore. That's why, like, that's why acquisitions have taken over IPOs and like the VC market. Like it used to be that you were an entrepreneur and you were more likely to actually grow a business and try to, sustain a position. And now, essentially, the market has gone very heavily to grow fast enough to get bought, and they just finance it with our retirement. We shouldn't have given it to them in the first place. I'm running low on time. Told you this was going to take a while. Um, Forces, yeah. Okay, we've covered most of this. Oh, here's an interesting thing. So, how bad are the consequences of this? So, look at our people with Ben, is the money printer, and it's easy to think that the only problem with that situation is that Ben is getting stuff for free. But here's the kicker: is that Tommy makes cars for all of us, but Ben is really wealthy and he has a lot of money. And you know what? He can make a lot more money if he works for Ben. So Tommy stops making cars and instead he builds yachts for Ben. Now we only have 8 people contributing. And that starts happening down the line, year after year, generation after generation. And more of the economy huddles around the counterfeit class. Says maybe I can just, make cars for them. Maybe I can make their yachts. Maybe I can serve them food. They pay really good. Everybody else who has to work for money doesn't pay shit. It's because they have to work. The amount of distortion in the economy, when you compound this over generations, is incredible. It leads to going on the idea of like giving too much money to large corporations, but they don't have any more. It's not like they've got better ideas because you threw 10 times as much money. It bloats administrators. It bloats busy work. There's a fantastic book by David Graeber called Bullshit Jobs. I highly, highly, highly recommend you read it. And what's funny is that the number of times he mentions financing in the book, but he doesn't know the framing of like how when you manipulate the price of money, it actually leads to this outcome. So it's fascinating if you go in with that perspective and read it and you realize that he's talking about the consequences of printing money and he doesn't even know it. It's insane. He came up with a statistic after interviewing like a ton of different people and trying to do this a pretty broad study. And it's funny because like the employees don't even want to admit it, but that it was estimated that up to 40% of our entire workforce that they believe in their job that they are doing nothing meaningful, and that if they didn't show up, nothing would change. Can you imagine what that does to the spirit of a person? To feel like they don't do shit that matters? Higher pay? Oh man. Man, there's some really good stuff. So wages are sticky, which means that price inflation, when it does show up, wages are always the last thing to happen. They're the last thing to go through. So it's really easy to change the price of gas. You're not going to get a raise. You're not going to get a raise fast to change the gas. That's our promise. um, which means that the employee is always in a default dependent situation to the employer. The default situation is they get paid less every year unless they convince their employer to pay them more, when exactly the opposite should be the case. And even worse is that savings is our runway for saying no. If you have 2 months worth of savings and your boss tells you to do something unethical, you're going to tell you, no, I can actually stand on my own 2 feet. I'm going to go get a different job, you jackass. But if you're 2 months in debt and you're living a paycheck to paycheck, you can't say no. You're going to do something that you don't want to do because you don't have a choice. And God damn it, your grocery bill just went up by $100 in the last 2 months. So not only can you not afford it, you can't afford it worse than you could 2 months ago. So you talk about people being stuck in jobs, talk about people losing their ethical foundation, having their morals compromised, having to do God knows what just to make some money. Welcome to the fiat economy. Affordability. Kind of already talked about this. Being issued debt doesn't make um, it doesn't make things more affordable. It just means that you're a slave to whoever it is that issued the debt out of thin air. Oh man, social creatures. Um, what happens to someone? What happens to a culture and a society when the richest person in the neighborhood is the only one not contributing? We're social creature. We want to emulate the people who succeed. What happens when the successful class is a whole bunch of people who do nothing, who destroy resources, and who have no ethics? They have no foundation for what the meaning and the value of anything is. A human being is unable to make a meaningful impact on the world. If they are unable to make a meaningful impact on the world, ceases to exist. Cheating the money system bloats the financial system. It redirects enormous amounts of resources toward unproductive endeavors. It starves productive capital. It traps people in debt. It bleeds their savings. It traps workers in jobs that they don't like. It forces them into desperate situations. It creates an environment of gambling and speculation. It makes meaningless focus on money and return and interest rates and stock market rather than the thing that we should actually be doing, which is making stuff and helping each other. It leads to inflated social status of people who contribute nothing. It creates an industry around the counterfeit class so that we're all just doing whatever the hell they want so that we can get our part of the cheated record system. It leads people to blindly give their hard-earned savings to huge corporations, and it consolidates small business into giant centralized systems. It defunds the most important productive institution of society, which is the family, which is us. It defunds us to fund corporate America. And this is just a small part. This is with 20 slides having to be deleted and going 2 minutes over time. The craziest thing is that we can actually fix it. All we have to do is fix the money. Thank you.